Being a WWE fan is a strange, emotional roller coaster. On the best days, it feels like you're witnessing the peak of sports entertainment, a perfectly told underdog story, an electric crowd losing its mind, a match so good you forget that it's scripted. It's magic. It's why we fell in love with wrestling in the first place. But then there are the other days, the face palm days, the days when the WWE reminds you that behind all the pyrotechnics and passionate promos is a billion-dollar machine that sometimes runs on ego, bad taste, and baffling decisions. I'm Senior Siete for 7 Wrestling. Let's take a look at 7 moments the WWE should be ashamed of. Now, before we get into this, we appreciate your support, so if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and DDT that notification bell. Also, we've got a second channel. Check out 7 Entertainment, all the snark you love from 7 Wrestling with a broader range of topics. Head on over now to see me, Senior Siete, co-hosting a video about celebrities who have dated professional wrestlers. Number 1. Not So Fond Farewell. In June of 2022, Vince McMahon, Mr. No Chance in Hell himself, did the unthinkable. He stepped down from the WWE. I gotta tell you, having been a wrestling fan all my life, it was almost like my JFK or Challenger. Not to make light of those events, but I will always remember where I was when I heard the news. Now, Vince was throwing in the towel a la Helen Hart at the 1994 Survivor Series, not because of age, ratings, or creative burnout, but because a bombshell investigation revealed he'd paid millions in hush money to suppress allegations of sexual misconduct and affairs with former employees. The Wall Street Journal exposed a tangled mess of NDAs, executive abuse of power, and a company culture that had allegedly enabled it all for years. For fans, it was a surreal moment. The man who built WWE into a global juggernaut, who had survived scandals, lawsuits, and creative disasters, was finally sidelined not by an angle, but by consequences. But he would not go gentle into that good night. I'm sure Dylan Thomas appreciated that. Leading up to his departure, Vince McMahon went on what could only be described as a bizarre farewell tour without ever officially saying goodbye. Despite being under intense scrutiny from both the media and the WWE's board, Vince showed up on live TV multiple times, not to address the allegations, not to offer transparency, but to strut to the ring, mumble a vague catchphrase, and soak in the applause like a conquering hero. One night he simply welcomed fans to SmackDown and left. Another, he reminded everyone of WWE's tagline, then, now, forever together, as if somehow that would erase the headlines. Felt like a man daring the world to stop him, or maybe just he was in denial that his era was ending. These impromptu appearances weren't just odd, they were uncomfortable. The crowd reactions were mixed, the talent backstage reportedly very confused, and the whole thing reeked of damage control wrapped in delusion. It was kayfabe bravado in the face of real-world scandal, and for a lot of fans watching, it was a moment of deep dissonance. The man who was the WWE for decades, walking out one last time, pretending like none of it was happening. And then after all that, he'd be like, "Consequences be damned, pal," as he returned to the company less than a year later. Number 2, Over the Edge. There's an old theater adage that says, "Don't date theater chicks because they're nuts." Just kidding. It says, "The show must go on." The phrase originated in the world of 19th century theater, where it was both a rallying cry and a survival tactic. Back then, live performances were often chaotic, props failed, actors fell ill, even fires broke out, but the audience had paid for a performance, and stopping the show could mean losing the crowd, or worse, the evening's income. So the motto was born: no matter what happens, keep the illusion alive. Over time, it became a symbol of performer resilience, representing the grit and grace it takes to carry on under pressure. What started on the stage eventually made its way into circus culture, music, and eventually pro wrestling, an industry built on illusion, drama, and an unwavering commitment to never let real life interrupt the spectacle. And as a former pro wrestler with a theater background, hey, I get it. But in the instance of the Owen Hart accident that took place at Over the Edge 1999, the show should have stopped. The tragedy at Over the Edge remains one of the darkest moments in wrestling history. Owen Hart, performing under his blue blazer persona, was set to make a superhero-style entrance from the rafters using a harness and pulley system, but something went horribly wrong. Midway through the pay-per-view, as the stunt was being performed, Owen fell over 70 feet to his death in front of a packed crowd at Kansas City's Kemper Arena. The broadcast cut away, and the commentators scrambled to explain the unexplainable. From there, they cut to Jeff Jarrett and Deborah to discuss their upcoming mixed tag match. The same Jeff Jarrett and Deborah who had just come off of a tag team run with Owen and were probably closer to him than anyone else in the company. The duo did their best to keep it together, mentioning that Owen was in their prayers in between cutting a half-hearted promo against Val Venus and Nicole Bass. As Jarrett's music fired up and they were headed to the ring, poor Deborah can be seen visibly breaking into tears. Matches resumed, storylines unfolded, and performers were sent out into the same ring where their friend had just lost his life. Now, as you've probably guessed, we're going to give Vince quite a bit of grief on this list, but maybe he deserves a pass on this one. Nobody ever dreamed something like this would have ever happened, but the further away we get from it, the more we believe that the fans in Kansas City would have been understanding if they had just called it a night and sent everybody home. In that moment, the show must go on, stop sounding noble, and started sounding cruel. Number 3, Blamin' Baron. In late 2018, the WWE found themselves in a creative slump. Ratings were down, fan enthusiasm was dipping, and the weekly product felt stale and repetitive. Rather than looking inward at overproduced scripts, misused talent, or an out-of-touch creative direction, WWE did something oddly on brand. They blamed someone else. That someone else being Baron Corbin. Well, on screen, that is. Corbin had been positioned as the general manager-elect on Monday Night Raw, a heel authority figure who made life miserable for the babyfaces, and as the show floundered, WWE's solution was to turn Corbin into a scapegoat, claiming he was the reason the product was suffering, both in kayfabe and confusingly in reality. Now, don't get us wrong, Baron Corbin doesn't do much for us, although the Deep Six and the End of Days are both baller moves, but let's not act like everything he said and did on the show wasn't the product of a writer's room. The blame culminated on the December 17th, 2018 episode of Raw, where Vince McMahon himself returned to TV alongside the rest of the McMahon family. In a now infamous promo, they told fans that they were back in control of the WWE, promising a fresh start and admitting that the show had been letting people down. Corbin was treated as the poster child for everything that had gone wrong. He was humiliated in the ring, attacked by multiple superstars, and written off as the source of the company's creative woes. It was a strange moment of deflection. While Corbin was playing a detestable heel, he was also just doing his job, performing a role handed to him by the very people now pretending that he was the problem. Blaming Corbin was like blaming the weather guy for a hurricane. The move exposed WWE's tendency to mask systemic issues with quick cosmetic fixes, and in doing so, unfairly turned one of the most dependable performers into a corporate punching bag. Number 4, Too Soon. Brian Pillman joined the WWE in 1996 with a reputation as one of the most unpredictable, innovative minds in the business. He blurred the lines between kayfabe and reality like no one before him, often leaving fans, wrestlers, and even management unsure if what he was doing was part of the show or if he had truly gone off script. His infamous Pillman's Got a Gun segment with Steve Austin in late 1996 pushed the boundaries in a way WWE hadn't really explored at the time, and even today, it remains one of the most controversial moments ever aired on Raw. Unfortunately, injuries had begun to take their toll. A devastating car accident in '96 shattered his ankle, limiting his in-ring ability and forcing him to rely even more on his promo skills and psychological edge to make an impact. Even so, he remained compelling television. Pillman was part of the Hart Foundation stable during the heated USA vs. Canada feud in 1997, standing alongside Bret Hart, Owen Hart, Jim Neidhart, and the British Bulldog. He brought a raw, chaotic energy to everything he touched, and many believed that if his body had held up, he could have been a major player in the Attitude Era. Tragically, Brian Pillman was found dead in his hotel room on October 5th, 1997, just hours before he was scheduled to wrestle at the Bad Blood In Your House pay-per-view. He was only 35 years old. The cause was a previously undiagnosed heart condition which ran in his family. WWE's response was jarring. Vince McMahon conducted an interview with Pillman's grieving widow live on Raw the very next night. was one of the most disturbing and uncomfortable moments in WWE history. Just 24 hours after losing her husband, Melanie was brought on live television and asked to discuss the tragedy in front of millions of viewers. Rather than offering a heartfelt tribute or space for mourning, the segment felt exploitive and awkward, like a corporate attempt to get ahead of the story and manage public perception. Vince's tone was clinical, and Melanie, clearly grieving and emotionally overwhelmed, was placed in an impossible position. For many fans and wrestlers, it was a moment that crossed a line, turning raw human grief into a talking point for ratings. Number 5. Ring Fling. Lita was once one of the most beloved performers, a trailblazing high flyer who broke barriers for women in wrestling and connected with fans through her fearless style and punk rock attitude. But after her real-life affair with Edge became public, the WWE quickly shifted her on-screen character to align with the controversy, turning her from an empowering figure into little more than Edge's manipulative, hypersexualized valet. So it must have made all the sense in the world to commemorate Edge's first world title victory with a live sex celebration on the January 9th, 2006 episode of Monday Night Raw. This raunchy segment is one of the WWE's most polarizing and frankly cringeworthy moments, a peak example of the Ruthless Aggression era's lingering obsession with shock value. So, for the first time in pro wrestling history, the main event featured a bed, silk sheets, and two of its top stars simulating sex in front of a live audience. The segment drew big ratings, reportedly the highest for Raw in over a year, but it also drew heavy backlash for its tastelessness, especially from parents and sponsors who were expecting the product to be edging back towards family friendly. Now, while it's tough to argue that this wasn't an overtly raunchy segment, it wasn't an anomaly for the era. WWE had long dabbled in salacious content, from bikini contests and bra and panties matches to segments involving implied nudity and crude humor. In many ways, the Edge Lita angle was just another entry in a long list of shock value stunts designed to pop a rating. But what made this moment stand out and stick with fans in a more unsettling way was the context behind it. Namely, the fact that Lita didn't want to do it. Years later, she would reveal that she was deeply uncomfortable with the segment and that she was told point blank she'd be fired if she refused to go through with it. That revelation reframes the segment entirely. What played out on live television as cheeky adult content suddenly becomes a case of real-world coercion, where a top female performer, already dealing with intense backlash from fans over a personal matter, was backed into a corner and forced to humiliate herself on a global stage. Even Edge, her on-screen partner, and John Cena, her segment opponent, reportedly voiced concerns and attempted to have the angle scrapped or toned down, but they were overruled. In hindsight, the live sex celebration is less about racy entertainment and more about power dynamics, a moment that exposed how little agency performers, especially women, had over their own characters during that era. Number 6. Latino Heat. Eddie Guerrero's death in 2005 was a devastating blow to the wrestling world. He was beloved not just for his incredible in-ring talent and charisma, but for the personal redemption story he represented, overcoming addiction and personal demons to become a world champion and a locker room leader. On November 14, 2005, the WWE aired a heartfelt tribute episode of Raw, and many wrestlers were given the chance to honor Eddie with genuine emotion. But it didn't take long for the sincerity to turn into storyline fodder. That's when the backlash began. Just weeks after Eddie's passing, his name was being invoked heavily in ongoing feuds, particularly in Rey Mysterio's rise towards WrestleMania 22. At first, Rey dedicated his Royal Rumble win and WrestleMania title pursuit to Eddie, which many fans were okay with. Felt like a genuine tribute. But the WWE kept pushing it. They had Randy Orton say on air that Eddie's not in heaven, Eddie's down there in hell. It was a line meant to draw nuclear heat, but it landed with a sickening thud. Just felt tasteless and exploitive. The sentiment from many fans was, "We loved Eddie, and you're using his death to try to sell his pay-per-views." By the time WrestleMania rolled around, Rey was carrying around Eddie's memory like a prop, and it had gone far beyond a tribute. It was like a storyline crutch. And we get that this full thing had the approval of Eddie's family. There was a similar vibe when Paul Bearer's death was used in the CM Punk Undertaker feud, but months and months of this, just too much. Too much, guys. Number 7. War Propheteer. The main event storyline leading up to WrestleMania 7 is one of the most controversial and politically charged angles in WWE history. Taking place in 1991 during the height of the Gulf War, the WWE turned Sergeant Slaughter, a longtime patriotic fan favorite, into an Iraqi sympathizer or foreign heel aligned with Saddam Hussein. This heel turned shocked fans who had seen Slaughter as a symbol of American military pride, and it tapped directly into the real-world conflict that dominated headlines. The angle culminated in Sergeant Slaughter defending the WWE title against Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 7. The match was billed as a patriotic showdown, Hogan, the all-American hero, versus Slaughter, the traitorous villain. WWE capitalized on the patriotic fervor of the time, incorporating Iraqi flags, Saddam Hussein lookalikes, and heavy anti-Iraq propaganda into the storyline. The angle generated intense heat for Slaughter, but it also drew criticism for exploiting a real international conflict and the suffering associated with it. While the storyline was effective in terms of audience reaction, it is often looked back on as a prime example of the WWE's willingness to blend politics and entertainment in ways that felt uncomfortable or tasteless. Sergeant Slaughter himself has spoken about the awkwardness of the role, acknowledging that it was a difficult character to portray, but one that elevated his profile. Ultimately, the storyline highlighted WWE's long tradition of tapping into current events to create compelling, if controversial, narratives. At the end of the day, it was considered extremely tasteless that Vince McMahon chose to profit off of the real-world tragedy of the Gulf War by turning it into a WWE storyline. At a time when American troops were fighting and dying overseas, the WWE was clearly exploiting the conflict. The blatant commodification of war and loss for profit showed a profound lack of sensitivity and respect. Well, there's our list. Did I leave out any other moments that the WWE should be ashamed of? If so, please leave them in the comments section below. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and DDT that notification bell. Be sure to check out our new Channel 7 Entertainment that's kicking off with a video that features celebrities who dated WWE superstars. Until next time, I'm Singer Siete for 7 Wrestling saying bye-bye.